Hello and welcome to the official podcast of the Northern Ireland UFO Society. This is our first podcast. Well, that's a lie really. I recorded a podcast back in 2013. It's floating around the internet somewhere. You should be able to find it, I suppose. If you can, let me know. I forgot the login details of it, so for argument's sake, we'll just say that this is the first one. Overview of what's going to be happening today then. So, I'm going to go through a segment called That's What I Call News. And then I'll go straight to my guest chat with our chief researcher, Ed Blair. If anyone's got the brains behind all things ufology in Northern Ireland, this is your guy. Not even sarcastic, this guy is a wealth of knowledge, and I look forward to having him as my first guest today. Then after that, we'll start to wrap things up, take a look at the next forecast of events, both astronomical and NIUFOS Society. So yeah, for a first podcast, I think this should be exciting. I'm still trying to get the grips with everything here, but you know, I'm sure it'll grow legs and it'll be fine. But that being said, let us go straight into the news section. Maybe I need to shorten that jingle, but not to worry. So, the news section, what we've got, we're going to call it That's What I Call News. At least we've named something in this podcast. The podcast still needs a name, so for argument's sake, and just for this episode, hopefully it'll be just known as the NIUFOS podcast, but hopefully we can come up with something a bit more creative than that. So this is What I Call News, my selection of weird, mysterious and paranormal news from around the world. I'll try and keep it brief as possible. So, a Nigerian man rises from the dead. Yes, you heard that right, and he recounts his near-death experience. This was taken from Coast to Coast AM. September last year, 5th of September last year, a man called Godwin Ugilu Amadou, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, sought medical attention for chest pains. Apparently soon after, he died after his condition worsened. Prior to his death, he asked his family not to be embalmed, which I suppose saved his life really in the long run, because 2 days later, his casket was seen to be moving before falling to the floor, and he casually wakens up, visibly shaken by his ordeal, naturally. It wasn't until a few days later that he began talking about his near-death experience from his brief visit to the other side. Amadou said that the moment of death, when it came, the chest pain had suddenly stopped, and he felt a profound peacefulness overcome him. He said, "The clouds opened up, and I saw something like a giant golden satellite suspended in space, and there I was greeted by a 75-foot-tall angel who stood in front of the gate." Sort of reminds me of the ancient giants from biblical times. Alongside this entity, there were 2 similar companions who spoke to each other and later allowed him to enter the city of heaven. Amadou claims upon entry he was greeted by a childhood friend who died 22 years ago and provided him with a tour of the heavenly grounds where he encountered other departed loved ones and even some of his ex-girlfriends. However, he says Christ appeared and raised him up from death, whereupon he felt that he was waking up and a sensation of being extremely cold. Now, I love stories like these. The near-death experience stories and what have you always fascinate me. And if you know somebody who works in a care home, for example, so somebody who should be well used to death visiting the grounds, ask them what happens whenever somebody dies or just before somebody dies, and I'm sure the stories they could tell you will really, really make you think. Fascinating stuff. Moving over to the new scientist, last chance to see the rare green comet before it disappears forever. So a comet first discovered in March 2022 is set to pass us very soon, the first time since the Stone Age. So we may be the lucky generation of humans to see it for the first time in about 50,000 years. It's expected that its closest point to Earth will be on the 2nd of February and could well be its last time in our solar system due to the speed and trajectory. Might be seen by the naked eye. Scientists reckon that it has a potential to be seen by the naked eye at that point, but binoculars and telescope is definitely recommended. It can now be found and will be found in the Boots constellation, which is just east of the Little Dipper. So now's your chance to get out and see it. Maybe incorporate it into a night watch. I don't know. Maybe we will do that. That remains to be seen. Sticking with asteroids and comets and all that sort of stuff, moving over to the BBC, Big-ish asteroid gives us a close shave. Its closest point being a very uncomfortable 2,200 miles. So just last Friday, that's the 27th, a minibus-size asteroid passed us at a distance of 2,200 miles. Now, putting that into perspective, that passed us closer altitude than some satellites. Or how about this? The asteroid, pardon me, was closer to us than Belfast is to New York, which is 3,171 miles away. So it was only discovered a week or so ago, so it sort of highlights how many we've yet to detect with our name on it. Now, the asteroid, it had an orbit similar to ours at about 359 days. So after the encounter that it had with us, it's now in an orbit of 425 days. So heaven knows when we'll see it next time. But yeah, a very, very close shave with us indeed. Moving on to something a little bit different now. So a local paranormal investigation company are now running their first public investigations of the new year. Now, Shadow Hunters Northern Ireland, I must say, fantastic group. I have been with them many times before. Ed has been with them before. And yeah, they're now running their first investigations, which are open to the public for 2023. Now, after investigating all they can at the Crumlin Road Jail, they're now offering tours of a very haunted Blackstaff Mill in Belfast. When I went to visit Fra last year, December last year, at the Shadowhunters Northern Ireland offices in the Blackstaff Mill, I can say that it is a very eerie, creepy atmosphere. You feel like you're being watched, and the stuff he's got in his office as well, absolutely mental stuff that's been confiscated from investigations that they've done before because Spirit has anchored itself or attached itself to it. Yeah, really does give you the creepy feel. Do you know, I might actually ask him to join us in a later episode, the podcast. I think it'll be interesting to listen to him. I hear all the stories and results he's got from his various investigations, which he's been doing over the year. Anyway, I highly recommend that you check these guys out. If you want a professional ghost investigator experience, then definitely give these guys a bell. I believe they're still selling tickets at the moment. If not, then I'm sure the February/March slots will be available very, very soon. So if you get a chance to head out onto it, I would recommend that you do it. And that is the end of our news section. Now, our next segment is a chat with myself and our chief investigator, Ed Blair. He's been with NIUFOS for quite some time. I think he's the second oldest member now, after myself. He's been investigating this stuff even from before I've been born. He is a wealth of knowledge, and I've got him here with us today, and I'll have a little chat with him. And Ed, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
How you doing, Ed? You all right, mate? Do you know, it's been a while since we've spoke. Been a while since we've seen each other in person.
It is,
so it's good to actually hear from you again. So I don't want to overinflate your ego or anything like that, but come on, you know that you are the sort of encyclopedia within NIUFOS when it comes to ufology and UFOs in Northern Ireland. There's no doubt about it. You're definitely the man to go to with all these things. But when you say, think of a place, whenever I say the word UFO, Northern Ireland is not going to be at the top of the list anyway. It might not even be on the list at all. But it's not one of the places you really think of, is it, when it comes to UFO activity?
Not really. It's only within the last, within the last 10 years, really. If that even, that was starting to, there's a lot of sightings been reported, and even in the news and things like that. But normally, it's because it's such a small area, a small island, really, things just pass us by. Sometimes people just look up, don't realize maybe what they're seeing.
I know. I mean, certainly before I co-founded NIUFOS, I always used to think that Northern Ireland had nothing like that at all. You always would think maybe United States, Southern America, maybe even England and around Wiltshire, where there's crop circles and what have you all the time. But Northern Ireland, I never really thought stuff happened. And it wasn't until I founded NIUFOS, or at least co-founded it, that I was learning things happening in Northern Ireland, and has been for years.
Yeah, you're talking the public stigma at that time. Oh, you see an UFO, you're mad, you're mental. There's a lot of people closed mind as there's no such thing as aliens.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't be seen any more mental than we were in the 70s and 80s.
70s, 80s, the 70s, 80s you can count on the drugs, but drugs seem then. But now, as I say, it's after the 2017 releases of the Nimitz footage. It seems everybody seems to be starting to see things. And then during the pandemic, because there was nothing to do, people are sitting at home at night and they just went out to the backyard and looking up, and they're actually starting to notice things.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because it sort of initially shocked me anyway, when it was in not just national news, but it was in international news that sightings in Northern Ireland had recently increased over the COVID pandemic. And then if you do sort of sit back and think about it, you're really thinking, well, yeah, it's because people were locked down and they had more time to get out and look up. Then they notice these things. And of course, a lot of the things that they're going to see are easily explained because they haven't actually seen them before. Some people might not have seen a satellite before travelling across the sky. Some people might not even have seen landing lights on a plane, believe it or not. Which are often mistaken for that sort of stuff. But Ed, with your wealth of knowledge and all that, sort of all that experience that comes with you, how long have you been researching UFOs for?
Well, I've not so much research, but I've been interested in them since the early 80s, since I was still in school. But I just had the belief that the size of the universe, even our own galaxy, that we can't be the only life forms. That's just was even to me back then. To me, that was just human arrogance to say that we're the only life form in the universe. It has to, and it's just I kept looking up different things of the sightings. We'll find them in the newspapers and things. I think I showed you a scrapbook here that I've got cuttings out of all the local newspapers over the years. This was just been a long time. It's been a long time interested in mine. And then when the NIUFOS came along, I jumped at the chance to join, because at least I finally found somebody that I could talk to about what I've discovered and what I've seen and things like that.
I was saying, like, NIUFOS, it's a fantastic platform to meet people like-minded. We've met some interesting characters over the years, like from we founded
yes, we have.
Some not so good, some fantastic, But, I think going back to what you said, where it's knowledge of the universe being so expansive that it's just ignorance to sort of think that we would be the ones that inhabit it and no one else. I think a lot of people can relate with that, because even I was the same, sort of thinking that we can't be alone in the universe. Yeah. It's mathematically impossible for a start, anyway, that's for sure. My sort of trigger was Star Wars. I've said it in a few podcasts before, where my Uncle Darren had loaned me a VHS copy of The Empire Strikes Back in the early 90s, and I remember watching it, and I was captivated by the idea of all these different creatures existing in a world that was so far away and potentially so long ago. Absolutely fantastic.
See, my interest kicked off way back when I can't even say. I'm not even sure if it was a repeat of the program, but it was Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious Worlds, and it was the clip was about an Australian news crew was doing a video night shoot over the straits between New Zealand and Australia, come out of what this name of the street says. And suddenly the plane was buzzed by a light, a strange white light, and they actually filmed it, following them. And even the memories right, the camera crew said they were a wee bit nervous because it was the only light in the sky around them. They were flying in pitch black, and it was just, it was just a shock to them. And to me, then it was from them sort of programs. Then that to me, it just said we can't be alone. There's no way.
And there's numerous sightings from pilots, from even the early days of aviation.
Yes.
Seeing these weird and wonderful lights follow them and performing impossible maneuvers. Jets weren't even invented back then at that point.
Yeah, the Foo Fighters of World War II would have been the best example.
Yeah.
The gunners and pilots of Allied bombers seeing these, thought it was the Germans had sent up some strange new technology after them.
And the Germans had thought it was the Allies as well, yeah.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember it from being there, but I remember reading about it, seeing so many documentaries about it. And it's absolutely fascinating. And going to, drawing from the nocturnal lights is the best way to describe them. We see that. I mean, you and myself have been out in investigations before, and we've seen lights that we can't explain.
That's right.
Both up in the North Coast, over in Donegal. I believe whenever you and a guy called Patrick had went to do a night watch independently, you had seen lights as well. So, I mean, lights is, a Northern Ireland phenomenon as well. It's not exclusively somewhere else.
Yeah, there was that one where I'd seen that strange, it was a light became a pinpoint and then it expanded, like as if it was opening some sort of portal or something dimensional, and then disappeared.
And where was that, sorry?
That was in the same place. We're down in Newcastle again, doing that area.
Yes, where myself and Patrick had did a night watch one night. Yeah,
it was the exact same place. Because unfortunately, we didn't have any cameras running at the time. We just happened to be getting ready to pack up and looked up. We saw that. We looked at each other and I said, "Did you see it?" And he goes, I asked him describe what he saw, and I said, "Yep, it's okay. I saw it too." Huh?
I mean, that's the thing. From we went out, we've. I'm not trying to make ourselves sound anything special or anything, but anytime we went out, it's been a 100% success rate.
Yeah.
We've always seen something that we can't explain. It's always see things that we can explain: satellites, planes, meteors, etc. But the things that we haven't been able to explain are like the hovering lights in the Mourne Mountains, especially whenever it was far, far too windy and far too late for even private aircraft to fly. I don't even think helicopters would fly in the wind. That was we had to cancel our watch night early because it was that windy. And then whenever we were up in the North Coast, you would shine a light up into the sky, and sometimes you'd get a response back. Something would flash back at you, which is very, very weird. There is video footage of it up on our Facebook page. I'm not too sure if it's on our YouTube page. If not, I will try and link it onto it, upload it onto it so people can see it. But you have to be there to believe it. I mean, it's no use talking about it, telling somebody about it, because they're not going to believe you.
No, you have to be there to see it, to be honest.
No, you really, really do. So we've had that 100% success rate, and you've seen things anytime you've been out, pretty much.
Yeah.
But it's not just lights in Northern Ireland, is it? There are other things as well. If we cast our minds back to a guy called Arfin, who on the Tanyaki Road near Points Pass had seen creatures as well.
Yeah, that's right. It was his description, I believe, was a cross between a reptile type creature and one of the grey aliens.
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of yards in front of me. He was driving along the road and it jumped out in front of him. He just looked at him and then just walked off and ran off into the field again.
That happened in an area, a stretch of area that Barry Fitzgerald had been doing research in. It stretches from here all the way over to Donegal. where there's a sighting of this sort of creature as well. Like, so it's not unique to the area, and it's been happening for many thousands of years as well.
Yeah. I think is it Donegal or is it not Monaghan in that direction, further south?
It could well be, but I think Points Pass sort of levels Donegal-ish, I think.
Yeah.
Despite coming from Northern Ireland, my geography of the Republic is not great, to be fair.
But I do remember he said something. Reminds me actually of the story of, what was it? But it was the guy at Quest Radio.
Okay.
He disappeared he was out walking his dog one morning, and he vanished near I think it was near the St Patrick's Chair, well and chair.
I've heard about St Patrick's Chair. Yeah,
I know for a fact I have the cutting in my scrapbook somewhere nearby in the filing cabinet. But I remember that they were looking for him for several days, and he appeared out of nowhere behind a policewoman and asked her what was going on. They've been looking for him, but he's refused to talk about it, what he'd seen, what happened to him.
Do you know roughly how long ago that was?
Early 80s. It was the time the pirate radio stations were all going about.
Yeah, I was actually reading something about that the other day.
I would have to go to the scrapbook to get the actual date on it. So
was there something called Energy FM as well?
That might be the actual radio station.
It was a pirate radio station that was broadcasting from a mountain in Monaghan, I think, directed towards Belfast.
Yes. I think it was actually just inside. It was in the forest area. Remember, on the border of that.
And it could actually be the same incident then. Really.
Yeah, it could be.
So we had somebody ask us about that the other day. Now, I, embarrassingly, have never heard of it before until the other day. So that's where I was reading up about Energy FM then. And it just sort of clicked when you were talking about it there. It must be the same thing.
Yeah, that's it. It was Energy 106. It was
Energy 106.
John. That's who it was. In fact, I got it wrong. It was actually wrong from 1997 to 2005.
So it's more recent then?
Yeah, it was just unfortunately just brought it up here, the internet. And it was, let's see. Yeah, it was just, well, it was raided by authorities afterwards, but he had disappeared.
And he reappeared in a few days' time, or?
It was somewhere in that region. I would have to say I would have to go to the scrapbook to find it.
I mean, it is incredible. Some of the stories that we know of, and some of the stories that we don't know of, that's happened so close to home. Stuff that would happen, or that you would associate to happen in the United States or South America, for example. Perceived abductions and all that sort of stuff. But some of the research suggests that it might not necessarily be aliens either, but it strays into the realm of cryptozoology, perhaps. And the island of Ireland is renowned for its folklore, for its banshees, its fairy people, and other strange and weird creatures that are native to this land, you know.
Just you mentioned, I have a book. I'm really plugging someone else's book. And it was by Jeremy Butler and Carol McNally. And on the back it says, "Why do you believe more in moving statues of the Virgin Mary than the possibility of visiting life forms from other planets?" And
that sort of does sum up the mentality from back in the 70s and 80s, doesn't it, really? I mean, that's, we were always we're always known to be a very superstitious land, and what have you. But it's interesting. Even the apparitions of the supposed Virgin Mary, another weird tale that you hear up and down this island. But you yourself, what is the most strange or weirdest encounter or experience that you've ever heard of?
Well, I know that the orphans one would be one of the craziest, but I haven't heard this. Supposedly one, I'm not sure. I haven't found any more details, but it's supposed to be a mass abduction in a forest in Garva. But I don't know whether that actually happened or not.
Where was that? Was that a newspaper or?
Yeah, it was something with 9 people or something. I suppose it's supposed, but I don't know if that actually happened or not. You know, it's hard to know. Because sometimes if it's in the papers, it's, you know,
it's dressed up a little bit if it's in the papers, I suppose. Speaking of papers, I think, wasn't it recently broke in one of the papers that I think you've been trying to investigate this yourself for quite some time, where the SAS had seen an unknown entity before on one of their patrols.
Yes, it was actually 4. I think it was. Again, I say that's all I've. I don't know this is going to be some of the questions I could probably scrap it out, but yeah, they were how you put, they were watching out of where a terrorist arms dump, and they were sitting. The next thing, a bright light appeared, and they were. Let's see.
Because I think,
you
said, they were staking out an IRA arms dump or something like that, weren't they?
In South Armagh. It was 1993. They stunned when they walked. The aliens walked. They found aliens walking right in front of their was in front of their sites. And they were so disturbed what they seen next. They just took a real decision and abandoned the stakeout. And this is XRAF, or this is SAS, being the toughest we have.
Yeah.
They just sort of stared at each other for a minute, and then the spaceman disappeared. Seconds later, the SAS troops saw a flash in the sky, and so they were so disturbed that they had took their rare decision to escape. Of course, they became the butt of the joke for their the regiment, accused of being on high-end drugs. But the 8 men stuck to their story. And it was about 4 years. It was actually 4 years after this incident that was leaked out.
I find that fascinating because somebody had contacted us before to see if we had any more information on it. It might have been Barry Fitzgerald, actually. And I was certain that it must have been you that had the newspaper clipping, because you said that our chairperson, Rodney, had the newspaper clipping about it, but he was getting confused with you.
And it was that one, and also the one of the sheep mutilation.
Yes, the sheep. Yes.
Yeah, there was one I had because he asked for. I can't remember which one he took. I know he took a photograph of it on his phone that day when he was with us. But I know I've sent him cuttings as well, with animal mutilations and stuff, where he was doing a thing for programming RTE.
That's right, yeah, I remember him saying that. And whenever Patrick was with us, did he also find out, or did it sort of come to surface, that whenever we were doing the preliminary investigation of the Orphan Jones case, of animal mutilation in around the sort of Points Pass area as well?
Yes, I think it was Barry actually mentioned that, I think. That he says there's a lot of mutilation, but it's just the farmers won't report it because they could be accused of. I think it would give them a bad name, and obviously ridiculed. But mostly because they're losing stock, and nobody wants to let people know how much they're losing.
There's that, and then I mean, I'm not too far away from Points Pass. It's in the countryside, and I've grown up in around the local area. It's a very very religious community in around there, especially in the farming community. They're very either Presbyterian or very Anglican or something like that. And to talk about something like that would be taboo, because their social circles are all in the church, or at least in those days definitely would have been all in the church and what have you. So it would have been a little bit taboo to speak about as well.
Yeah, it's... I'm trying to think. Yeah, it is. Because it's the border area, I sometimes find that it can be a bit more... Well, also, Yeah, I would say the more religiously in that way. I think the more, plus they're more insulated as well.
Yeah,
because it's just all farmland.
it certainly was. Anyway, growing up in around the Banbridge area, yeah, there's very, it's not so much nowadays, I don't think, and the younger generations coming through, religion and what have you doesn't really matter to them. Certainly whenever I was growing up, I was definitely at the tail end of the sort of, the religious outlook on things there. And yeah, the community, close-knit community, all from the same church, etc., or even from local churches scattered in around the area. And that was just something you would not talk about. I mean, I couldn't even speak about that stuff with my grandparents today, I don't think, without being told that I'm talking nonsense. I can almost hear my grandmother telling me now that I'm speaking nonsense.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because it was just, again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that they're more believe on a ghost of the moving statue of the Virgin Mary than life from outside the planet.
So even like from my background, which was Presbyterian, even the ghost side of things was like a no-no. But if you come from the Roman Catholic background, you were seen to be more superstitious. Well, I hesitate to use that word, but superstitious to believe in ghosts and the paranormal. I always did. I always believed in it. Haven't seen a ghost or any paranormal activity until more recent years. And that's not including UFO stuff. But the ghostly side of things, yeah. I mean, Northern Ireland, the island of Ireland, if there's one thing that it can be associated with, if you say paranormal, ghosts, all that sort of stuff, the island of Ireland is definitely up in the top 5 countries that you would associate it with. I mean, England is definitely going to be there again. America, maybe not so much, but that might be because
they're only a young country.
They're only a young country.
Not as old as.
Even though a lot of the paranormal investigation programs are based in America, you don't really sort of think of America as the ghostly place, but definitely the older European places, 100%. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. So even like here, we have plenty of history in this, of the country. It was all one country type of thing, and it's one nation.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about it, and there's a lot of people doing research into all this sort of stuff. There's loads of people doing ghostly research, paranormal research in Northern Ireland, even the island of Ireland. Yeah. Not so much with the UFO stuff. It's really just us and maybe like a couple of independent people, like Barry Fitzgerald, Miles Johnson. Is that another one that name has popped up very recently? Well, not very. He's been on the scene for quite some time, but
he was part of the old Quest International group.
Yeah, and he's now sort of. Anytime I hear about him, he does tend to be working by himself now. And there's even a couple of other sort of smallish UFO groups that have popped up recently as well. So there's quite a few people now, because we now recognise, going back to the pandemic, when the reports had increased when it comes to seeing strange objects in the sky, that's when a lot more of the smaller groups had popped up, wasn't it? So the interest is definitely there. And I think we can safely say that ufology, even though it never used to be a thing, it definitely is now, and it has been for quite some years.
Yeah, I think it was, it was the release of the Nimitz group.
Yeah.
That's when those videos were released. That's when it sort of propelled everything into the public eye. The fact that the Americans were studying this, even though they kept denying it for years. And it seems to just propelled everything, and then people sort of, oh, maybe there's something out here or going on. And that's what seemed to have happened. Just was partly a mass awakening.
And I mean that could be the case. It just seems to be a mass awakening now that we're sort of walking away from our troubled past People are now more open and receptive to these sort of things, aren't they? So that could be a lot to do with the increase in activity here, or perceived increased activity here. That's, it could well be the case. But before we wrap this up, we've got about 10 minutes left, and I'll fit in a couple more things at the end. But with yourself, a couple more questions, I suppose. Do you think there's specific areas that attract the paranormal / UFO phenomena? I can almost say that. A bit of Ivan Little there. Or do you think it's it could really happen anywhere?
Well, I guess it could happen anywhere, but it seems there's a lot of concentrated around a lot of granite and things like that.
Yeah, because some of our research has sort of pointed towards that before, hasn't it?
Yeah, because the thing about the moorings there, how much we've seen at the moorings, and then other times it's just been out over the coast, water and granite things. So it
seems to depend on the ground, doesn't it? Depending on what the ground is made up of. And you're right. Granite, coastal areas. It's not limestone. I don't think it's a lot of sandstone. So it's sort of crystalline. Areas. It is a fascinating topic, and some of the main reports that we get are from the Mourne region, over Belfast, especially by sort of Cave Hill, I think it is.
Cave Hill and Black Mountain, that direction. It's all one sort of, I suppose it's one end of the Antrim Plateau.
And in around the Loch area as well, if I remember.
Yeah, it's all one part of that area.
So, last question for you then, with your expert opinion and your advice here. What would you recommend to somebody who is, for the first time, looking to go out for their own sort of watch night? What advice would you give them before they go and do that?
When they go out, don't be expecting to see something straight away. You may see light in the sky, but it could be a plane, or it could be, if the light's moving, it could be just a satellite. I would advise anybody to find out an app. You obviously get all these apps for your phones now, and get one with a satellite tracker on it. So you see a light in the sky, you can put your phone up to it, and if it's tracking the same thing, you'll know then you've picked up a satellite or a piece of space debris first. They go in specific orbits and directions, but obviously if you see something that's completely out of character from just moving it erratically, and obviously you can record it in your phone, or if you have a camera, it's always the best thing to do. You
don't really need any fancy equipment or anything like that.
Not really, no.
You can really go out with just using Mark 1 eyeball.
Yeah, just for your own gratification when you see something, just use your own eyes. Now, if you've got a pair of binoculars, certainly take them with you. You get a closer look.
And some people even suggest that whenever you go out there, you should go out with the intention of seeing something, or the will to see something. And do you feel that affects it? Does it help materialize things?
There is a chain of thought like that. People have sort of meditated to start to happen. But I find just when we've gone out, it's just with prearranged a date, but we haven't gone out with any preconcept any notions in our mind what we're going to see or what. Just go out with a clear mind and open mind. No, and just hopefully, it's just a matter of hoping then. If something, you'll see something. You'll always, if it's a clear enough night, you'll always see something in the sky. As I say, maybe be a satellite, a shooting star, or something. But obviously, you'll get to notice all these different things, what they look like over time.
Yeah.
So some people do say, I did watch a program where somebody said he meditates and tries to project his thoughts to make these things, and he says it happens for him. I don't know whether there's any scientific basis for that, whether it actually happens or not. I have found it just go out and have a look.
No, and sometimes that is the best thing to do, actually, is to go out and have a look. Just on a nice clear night with a very little moon, I would suggest to get yourself out there and have a look. Ed, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast this time, our very first podcast. I look forward to meeting you again. And if anyone's got any questions that they'd like to forward to Ed, send them to the Facebook page and we can ping it to him. Ed, thank you very much for joining us, mate.
No problem, mate. Thanks a lot.
Wow. How was that? Absolutely fascinating. Ed, he definitely is one of our experts when it comes to these sort of things. So yeah, let me know what you thought of that, and if you do have any questions for Ed, please do send them in to us. Now, let us move in to the next segment before we sign off. Some of the upcoming astronomical events. So let's see what we've got coming here. So within the next sort of week or two, we've only got 2 events that are coming up. So, like we said earlier on, comets. Comet Charlie 2022 E3, also known as the Green Comet, could be visible to the naked eye, or by the naked eye, in the northern hemisphere. And remember to look towards the Boots constellation. And then the full moon of February, also known as the snow moon, so called because the Native American culture believe this to be the heaviest time of year for snow, for the fall. It's also known as the hunger moon because with the white snow and the bright moon, it made hunting very difficult. So it's probably not the best weekend to go and hold a watch night. So if you're planning a watch night, I would recommend that you reschedule that to another night. And then finally, the next couple of events coming up for NIUFOS, we've got our committee meeting happening on the 25th of February. So if you're a committee member listening to this, you should have the details already. If not, 25th of February, and send me a message and I'll see what I can do. Give you the link or venue that we're going to be chatting on. And then, of course, a big thing in our calendar. It is the 10th anniversary of the Northern Ireland UFO Society. This year, 2023, and not only are we launching this podcast to sort of celebrate it, but we're having an open day as well for anyone who's interested in joining us with a possible watch evening ensuing from the meeting of the day. So there's great interest in this so far. We've received several messages about this. So if you're interested in joining us and seeing what we do, then you can join us in Belfast on the 11th of May. Now, we should be open from about 11 o'clock in the morning, and the venue is to be announced closer to the time, but I'd imagine with the amount of people looking to join, it might be less intimate than a hotel lounge. It looks like we're going to have to rent it somewhere out, but that is not a bad thing. And if the odds are in our favour, then we may conduct a mini watch night as well up along the north coast. We've had 100% success rate up there so far. Myself and Ed and some of the Shadow Hunters team had come out and joined us one time before. They left just before they seen anything, but that is a shame. But as you heard from Ed and myself, the north coast never seems to disappoint. So there we go. And that's pretty much what we've got this time. Listen, thank you very much for listening and tuning in to our first podcast. It's been rather fun trying to get the grips with this new equipment or what have you. We were speaking to Ed, our chief researcher. He is an expert when it comes to things like that. If there's anything that you need to ask him, again, don't be afraid to ask him. Excuse me, there goes my tickly cough. I will sign off now before I go into another coughing fit. So again, thank you very much for listening.